from her, as far as I know.
All right, Mayor, go ahead and call this November 15th meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee to order. It is 1:31. Mr. Welton?
Here. Here.
Okay. and Craig, will you do the public announcement?
Sure, all AMATS meetings are open to the public. Public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have presentation by staff or a consultant. At that point, the committee will be given a chance to discuss the matter, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. Do we have an approved agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, do you have any changes? Seeing none, any objections?
Are we the show?
We are the
Three's a
show.
quorum, though, isn't
Sorry?
it?
Three's a quorum.
Do we have Crispin's and
I haven't
Pete were
heard from-
downstairs half an hour ago?
Okay, the agenda is approved. We have before us the minutes from October 25th for approval.
I don't think those are ready yet.
No?
They're not in the packet.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
those were the, they're about 20, 21 pages. It was the tip discussion, so we just haven't chewed through them yet.
Okay,
I mean, Lori's finished them and gotten them to us, but I haven't gotten them.
Okay.
okay, we'll do those next time. Okay, agenda item 5A, the Unified Planning Work Plan 2019 Budget Memo. Right?
So, just as a quick refresher, this is one of our four major plans that we're required to do. And this is the work program, which is what staff is going to do in the 2-year time span of that work program. You adopted this UPWP in 2017 for the 18-19 years. And, but we budget annually. We get an annual budget from DOT based on what the appropriations coming out of DC are and what the obligation limit and all sorts of different things, and they factor it in, and then they give us this number. So our number is about the same as last year. So again, we're not adopting the work program that's already been done for the 2019 year. This is just the budget. And it's very similar to last year's. The main difference is that we won't probably spend as much money in the tip because we're going to have the tip adopted fairly soon. We won't have as much money, with a little care and feeding for the Spenard Road Corridor Study and the non-motorized transportation plan update, but those two items should be on the final steps for approval fairly soon. We will have a little more money for the federal planning certification because we will go through that in the third quarter of this year. But really, that's about it. The budget itself is not something that would require a 30-day public review, et cetera. The public review of it is through the committee process, so it's just approval of the budget, and that's what we're asking for from you for today. It did go through the TAC 2 weeks ago, and they recommended approval.
Thank you, Craig. Questions, John?
So we're going to look at the scoring, our scoring system. Is that a separate task or
Oh,
just folding
so
that?
there is money in the tip. I mean, I have in that task 120, just under $70,000.
Where is that in this here?
It is in your this sheet here, which is on your document here.
The colored one.
It is the third page. All the pretty colors.
This one. Oh,
Right, sorry.
I want to try that.
One more.
There we go.
So if you look,
So that doesn't go in the budget?
no, that is part of the budget.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. So task 120 there shows $67,491 in it. That is the efforts that will start in relation to looking at the tip criteria and the scoring. We had just under 100,000 in it last year for all the efforts related to the tip this year.
What would be the contractual? I mean, I know it's
So-
spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah, so that contractual is, we had for many years attempted to get for lack of a better term, an online tip tool similar to what PM&E has for all their projects, where you can look at the map of Anchorage and you can click on a project and have it pop up with the scope and schedule and the budget and all that sort of stuff. We had worked on that for a number of years, and the contractor that we had and the program just didn't work out for us. So this is kind of some dollars in there to look at the possibility of some other method of getting some sort of online tip tool, so we can have the projects up there and people can look at their area of town as opposed to looking at a PDF of a spreadsheet and trying to track down their project. It will show the area. So that's what those dollars are for.
Okay, so this line is not just for looking at the scoring, it's just tip related stuff.
Anything tip
Right,
related.
okay.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, Craig, in your memo, the first line of the second paragraph, which talks about annual obligation authority limit, because I'm relatively new to this game, can you, or maybe you, Dave, somebody explain what that means?
Looking for that language there. Oh. So what happens is, in the 5-year federal transportation bill that comes down, it comes out and says, here's the dollars that get to be spent every year. And there's a 5-year bill. That's wonderful, because in years past, we've done continuing resolutions. But the other thing that the feds have to do is say, we're going to tell you how much of that 100% of the funds that you can spend, and sometimes they have a rescission where they pull back some of it. So sometimes the obligation authority is only at 97%. They'll pull back 3% to use for other parts of government, and so we will get 97% of what they originally put in that 5-year bill. So I don't believe there was a rescission this year, as far as I know, for 2019. So we should be pretty much at 100% of what was originally budgeted.
And not this 87% that we're estimating?
Yeah, that was a possible estimate. When we wrote this, we didn't have our allocation from the state. They hadn't given it to us. So this budget is with the correct
100%.
allocation, 100% as far as I know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, so, agenda item 5B, CAC appointments, Craig?
So our Citizen Advisory Committee, as you remember, has members from each assembly district. We have members from the Chugiak and Anchorage Chambers of Commerce. We have a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission on there, and someone from J-Bear. John Spring was our Planning and Zoning Commission rep, and he, as you know, is going to work on his vineyard in Oregon, so no longer on the committee. At P&Z selected Brian Looney, a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as their new representative to the Citizen Advisory Committee. So he would be that P&Z seat. In addition, we had an opening in the Chugiak Eagle River District, Assembly District, and so Matt Cruikshank, who we don't see here today, but he was at the Technical Advisory Committee when we discussed this, is the representative selected for that seat. So we brought these before the Technical Advisory Committee, and they recommended both Mr. Looney and Mr. Cruikshank as great additions to the CAC.
Brian, did you want to say a word?
Don't really have much to add. I just saw that short little bio on there. It's kind of like, boy, I wish I was that guy. I looked pretty impressive.
You are
But,
that guy.
I am just willing to help out. Just hoping I can add to the discussions of these different committees. Yeah, if I can fill John Spring's shoes, then I'll be happy. He's a very knowledgeable planner. You know, I always feel like I'm the engineer guy with almost too tactical sometimes, but I'm learning how to be part planner. But any questions for me? I'm just looking forward to
Figure that
helping
out, let us know. There's some of us who are interested. Any comments or questions from the committee?
Well, I make a comment. I've moved to approve wholeheartedly because I've known Brian for many, many years. In fact, way early when I was getting involved with community stuff and all that, and there was road into Kincaid Park. You were on that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we've both grown and learned so much over those years. It's pretty amazing. You become less of an engineer distinctively. I'm not sure what I've become more of, but yeah, I'm excited that you would do this, and thanks for being on the planning commission.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to echo that too. It's always good to see folks who are willing to contribute their own time and effort into this type of stuff. So, anything else from the committee? From the public? Okay, so can we have a motion?
Move to approve both appointees.
Second.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Okay, 5C, complete streets policy. Craig?
I'll let Joey will take care of that one. That's her baby.
Alrighty, I'm just gonna sit, if that's okay. It's formal today. So the complete streets policy is up hopefully for final approval today. It's on your iPads, but it's this document, and just to just to be clear about what you are looking at here, so everything in black is existing before the policy you looked at. Everything in red signifies some change to the policy. The red that's underlined is added language change, and then the red that's strike through is language that's to be deleted. And these are all based on the comments that we received both from the Technical Advisory Committee and the Policy Committee when we went through the first time. They're the ones that were approved by both that committee and this committee in our initial run-through. So that's hopefully pretty clear, and it was, as the committee suggested, that we put it in this more type format so it's easier to figure out what the final policy would look like. So hopefully this is a little bit more clear. And we took this through the Technical Advisory Committee 2 weeks ago, and they are recommending approval. We did just make a few very minor typo changes to the table of contents that I didn't catch, that Stephanie and another member caught for us. So those are the only changes that have been made since the TAC meeting. So yeah, so hopefully everything looks good. Also, the only thing, I guess the major thing that was taken out was the checklist, and that is on page 5. It's the 4th bullet down on page 5, and that's the bullet that states that we would be using a green roads checklist form and a complete streets checklist form. So that was the only place where that was actually mentioned, so we did a strike through. And the Technical Advisory Committee held a work session. I think there were some policy members present there, in which it was decided that the checklist, it made more sense to do that on the design end rather than prior to project funding, because we have so many projects, we don't have the resources to do a full walkthrough and checklist for each project that's looking for funding. So if you would like to suggest an alternative to that, that's great. Right now, we're working with our PM&E department to try and get some sort of checklist integrated into their design review process. And I believe that's the design study report phase. So that's prior to the 35% design. And then we also indicate in this policy that when we redo the TIP criteria, we will have a complete streets criteria in there, and that will include complete streets elements that will have to be checked off. So if a project is applying for TIP fund or would like to submit for TIP funds, they'll have to fill out a complete streets criteria, and then that will hopefully be at the front end to encourage folks to do complete streets and help them get funding. Do you have any questions
Could you roll over that last part again about the
about the
checklist?
checklist? Yeah, so rather than having, so we've deleted it from the actual policy itself. And so we're hoping to hit that on a front end and a back end by doing, on the front end, it would be when we redo our TIP criteria, we will have a complete streets element in that criteria. And so people or projects that show that they're meeting complete streets goals will have a better chance of getting TIP funding on the front end from that TIP process.
So do you envision that being a checklist?
I don't envision it being a checklist. I just envision it being a criteria, a TIP criteria, a complete streets TIP criteria.
And will that come back to the policy committee for approval?
It would just be like any other TIP criteria. Do you approve the policy committee approve all the TIP criteria, right, Greg?
Okay. What, John?
Well, maybe I'll follow up on that checklist.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm going on too. I mean, it sounds like, so when you say that you're trying to incorporate this into the PM&E process and insert it in the DSI stage, what's the metric? What's the tool we're using to evaluate whether or not it's been fully integrated? I guess, I mean, personally, I'm having a lot of heartburn with this removal of the checklist, because to me, a checklist is a simple way to say this does or this doesn't satisfy our requirements. And I'm a little less concerned about at which phase. I think there's a valid argument for pushing it at the DSR phase. But again, this removal of the checklist is a little strange to me. I thought we were expecting to see what the checklist looked like and just fully expected it to be integrated into this process, but.
Right.
uh,
I know, and I know that was the expectation, but at the work session, when we did the work session with the TAC, since they're the technical advisory committee, we wanted them to go over the checklist with us and give us some pointers on how to make it better. And at that work session, it was decided that the checklist should be completely deleted, that it didn't make sense to have it. And it wasn't my decision, but I'm just respecting the will of the TAC at that work session. Because the amount of projects we have, so the way Fairbanks does it, they have a checklist, and they are able to, because they only have 4 or 5 projects that they have to fund, they're able to do a full walkthrough before they fund their projects and do the checklist, and then the checklist comes back and they'll look at all the projects and go, oh, okay, this one's meeting complete streets criteria, great, well, let's fund that one. But we'd love to do that too, but since we have 70+ projects to review, we don't have time to do that.
I get that, but I guess
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with the walkthrough part of it. I remember this was a very vibrant discussion at the policy committee meeting when it came up. I still don't see how, I guess I'm not picturing a checklist being predicated on a lengthy, complex walkthrough of a project. It's a checklist. You review the project and you check boxes. So what am I missing here?
No, you're not missing anything. That was just the Fairbanks example. I wanted to explain to people how Fairbanks uses their checklist to give them an idea of how it could be used. We didn't, in our checklist that we were bringing forward, we didn't specify that it had to be a walkthrough or anything. It was just a standard checklist. There were elements in there that folks did think would be hard to have at the very beginning of the project phase, like some traffic counting data and other elements that were in there. So, I understand the heartburn. I don't know what makes the most sense. It does seem to me that having a complete streets criteria in the TIP is a good thing. And I think integrating it in the CSS process, or the design criteria manual process is also a good thing. I was envisioning when we do it on that end, that it would be more like a checklist.
Yeah.
That the project managers would go through and then say they're doing. So I think it's a good, staff's opinion, I think it's a good compromise. If it's not enough, we could always change the policy later on.
For today.
Folks aren't for today, it's of course your decision, so whatever you'd like to do.
So I guess one of my comments on this is, it seemed to me like, and that's why I originally brought this up, it referenced the checklist, and that was the key, whether or not this meets complete streets or not. And so I have 2 concerns, one at each end of the extreme. One of them is, what we have before us here, to me, is a very, very subjective. It's totally subjective, whether or not an individual project is meeting this. The other side of my concerns are a checklist that would box us in on stuff. And what I'm concerned about now is that we kind of went through this and we couldn't come up with one, so now we're saying we're going to kind of do it, but it's not going to come back to this group, is what I heard. So that I have concerns about. I do not want to get boxed in on things that we haven't agreed on. Not that, anyway, that's my concern, and I'm not sure, we can pass this today, but I'm not sure it does anything, to be quite honest with you, because it doesn't really, it's pretty nebulous as far as I read this, but I'm reading it from an engineer's point of view, so maybe
I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that even though it's an encouraging policy, pretty much it's encouraging folks to do things. Maybe not even that differently than they're already doing them, I don't know. But I think it will be helpful to at least have a policy that's adopted, even if the checklist, if our tool to just make sure that everyone is following the policy isn't totally developed yet.
So So could I ask, and maybe I've asked this before, maybe it's been asked before, but have we looked at other municipalities, other MPOs around the nation, other than Fairbanks, and seen what they have as far as checklists?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did take this policy, we developed it from the Complete Streets, National Complete Streets Coalition. We looked at their top list of ranking complete streets policies. I think it was 2016, because that's back actually when we started developing this. But so we took their top 5 policies and tried to fashion ours, including Fairbanks, after those ones, which they all included the 9 elements that this policy has.
I'm sorry, I
You
didn't
mean
just ask the
checklist?
question. I was asking about checklists.
Yeah, so the checklist, so I looked at, I think, 4 or 5 different ones. I developed the one that I brought forward to you last time using Fairbanks's, which was, I think, 9 pages. We also used Oakland, which was 3, and then Seattle's, which was, I think Seattle was also longer, like 4 or 5 pages. So ours ended up being 3 pages long, but I basically used those 3 to fashion the checklist that I brought forward. And that was really just a draft, and was also looking for guidance from our technical advisory committee on how to make that better.
I think that's what the expectation was.
So we did,
Is
yeah,
that-
that's what we
get
were
that back?
throwing in there. And
I think if I remember correctly, though, in the TAC, it kind of went all over the place, and then it ended up with no one being able to agree, so it was like, well, let's not do one, if I remember correctly. It was,
well, I believe that, I remember it quite clearly in my head, but I feel, I'm pretty sure that Brian Lindemoon suggested that we take it out, that it was going to be a paper pencil with being exercised, and maybe that it wasn't a valuable tool. And then that was discussed, and then that was discussed by a few of the other members. And Jerry Hansen was also supportive of doing it a later phase, and Michelle chimed in too. That not everyone was at the work session. Stephanie wasn't there.
I guess I
So,
would propose, I guess I'm fine with approving this today, with the caveat that when we do get a checklist or whatever it is, that it comes back to the policy committee and we're able to review and approve it, because otherwise, it seems to me like we're approving something that the real mechanism that's used to determine whether we're needed is something that we're not going to be.
I'd have a slight twist on that in that I'd approve it, but I would undo the deletion of the project compliance with this policy to be determined based on the filing of a complete streets checklist. I'd pull out the green roads section, I get that. But I think we want to leave that in there, Dave, some teeth that says we're expecting a checklist. And so if we approve this today, we're approving a requirement for a checklist without a checklist, which I don't like, but it does mean that that has to come back to us at some point, which unfortunately puts you back in the position, Joni, of having to create this checklist again.
that's fine. I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind. I was looking for guidance from the technical folks. I'd like the checklist to be as good and relevant as we can make it, so
Sure.
I would be fine with that. I do feel like it is an important element of the policy. I understand the concerns, too.
Okay, so,
I got a couple
Tom,
of questions.
go ahead, John.
Well, following up on that, I'd rather see a checklist and then all this other stuff. To me, the checklist would be the main thing. So I must have missed that work session. No, but we're completely blanked it. But I'd like to see a checklist. And does it refer here to a checklist? What's in front of
Page
us now?
5, it's deleted.
Right.
Top of page 5 is deleted.
Okay,
but-
okay. So stay on page 5 for another. Okay, so that we don't have a checklist, so that makes sense. You want to put that back in.
Yeah,
Okay, and page 5, section 6, number 4. I think of 27th Avenue Bike Boulevard and Benson and Northern Lights. And I think, okay, you make that a dynamite east-west corridor, so you don't go on Benson and Northern Lights, but this says you don't get to do that. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, which one are you referring to?
I think it's the other way around.
Section 6, number 4, but
Section
you
6,
can
number 4.
exempt where reasonable and
Yeah,
equivalent project
so
along the
that
same
was,
corridor. You don't
An
have
exception,
that.
an exception to this policy. I think in the example you gave is if there's two projects on a similar corridor, Northern Lights and 27th, this exception, if it stayed instead of was deleted, would say that where there's a reasonable and equivalent project along the same corridor already programmed to provide these facilities, the other one doesn't need to do it.
Yeah, I'm with that. I like that.
Oh, you'd like that?
Well, I think there's times, you could, if we spent a huge amount of money making Northern Lights, and Benson, those two, really bike-friendly, it'd be a huge amount of money. Or you could just say, go take 27th.
Yeah.
A lot less money, and you really make 27th deluxe for bikes. Or, I'm using an example, it maybe it'd be extreme. So I would not ever want to preclude that, because this, given a fixed amount of money, you can do 4 projects on 27th, Northern Lights and Benson, or you could say, let's just shift that money over and make one really totally what we need. And this would preclude that, and I like that flexibility. I don't think every single road needs to be, and I think we talked about this, it's the system should function for all of us, but not every specific road. I'll ride on the highway, but most people probably shouldn't. I want to ride with them.
just so you know, that was a deletion that was suggested by the BPAC. So I think Zach was kind of leading the charge on that one. So that suggestion did come from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Just FYI.
Can we have
Delete
Pierce
4.
address that? Or Lindsay? Dave?
Sorry.
Can Pierce or Lindsay address that point then?
Oh, well,
Thinking
they're
explain
not-
the error.
Neither one of them are on the.
They're not on the
They're
BPAC
not
though.
on the BPAC.
Oh, they're not, I thought you were.
Stephen Shell is our BPAC. And then this, deleting that was actually kind of suggested by Zach, and then I think the other committee members followed suit.
Did they have my clear and compelling explanation on why it
They
should be in there?
didn't, John.
Would that have swayed
You're the
them?
policy, you can do whatever you like. I just wanted to give you some background.
Well, I'm respectful of their opinion. I was wrong once and I've never been on.
Why don't I've got a suggestion here. Instead of trying to do amendments to this, and since there's only 3 of us here, what I would suggest is that we table this for now and ask for 2 sections to be changed and brought back, and then we can discuss this with the full group when,
I don't know if he's through with his list yet.
oh,
No, that was basically it. There's a typo that you'll find. But that was, I'd like to see 4 reinstated, but you can leave it whatever way. We'll deal with that next time it's up. I hope I remember. But a checklist, I'd like to see a checklist.
Okay, so table it, and what were the 2 sections that you wanted?
so under page 5, section 6,
Okay,
under exceptions, John would like to see number 4
put that in.
undeleted.
Okay,
And then on page 5, section 5, the second to the last bullet that's been deleted, leave in everything except the green roads portion of that.
okay,
Okay. And I guess what I would ask too is before this comes back, if we could, and when I say we, I mean you, could look and see, are there other checklists, other places, and bring examples of those so we can look at those?
Yeah, happy to do that for the next policy meeting.
All right.
Does this need to go back to the technical advisory committee? Or, group? No? Okay,
Not
so
unless they
just-
direct it.
And how many examples did you want me to make?
Well, I guess what I would ask, and I'll other suggestions, but what I would ask is that we look at MPOs that are similar to us, that don't have just 10 projects, they maybe have 70 or more, because I would imagine they're faced with the same issue we are, is they don't want to go through a 6-page checklist on, 150 projects, that's just not going to work. So maybe there's some checklists out there that are a little more concise and a little more.
Sure. Yeah, like Fairbanks is 9, I think Seattle's was 3 or something. I'll find some different length ones. We can have a scope
Okay.
to look at.
Yes, sir, John.
Well, I'd look at Nashville. I was so impressed with them at that walkability conference. I mean, see what they use. I don't know if they use checklists, but remember, they were so focused on
In Atlanta?
getting people active.
Or you mean,
Well,
where
Nashville's
were-
group was there at the.
Oh, Nashville's group at the
Right,
conference,
and
okay.
they really impressed me. See what they have.
And did you want a work session to go over the checklist, or is this
Bring it
something
back and let
you
us
feel
look at it.
comfortable doing at the meeting?
I guess if you can get those to us ahead of time, so we have time to look at them.
Okay. And then would you like me to bring back the checklist that I drafted
Sure.
too? Or-
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
And do, except that when is the meeting in December? 'Cause I'm
20th.
on for the, yeah, I'll be back then, okay. Sounds
Okay.
good.
I don't think I've ever tabled anything before. Is there anything else that I need to do on this? Sorry?
Any public comment?
Oh, any public comment on this? Yes, sir.
My name's Pierce Schwab. I'm with Bike Anchorage. Just wanted to say we're really excited about the policy. I'd go back to Mr. Kemp's original suggestion and say that I really believe it is worth passing now regardless. It's been a very long process to get this forward, and Joni's worked really hard on it, and the community is really excited to see it happen. We think it's an important statement of the vision and prioritization of projects that AMATS funds. So I think if we did, again, up to you guys, but if we did have this policy adopted with the anticipation of including the checklist later, that would be a concrete step in the right direction to at least get this on the books, because it has been discussed and kind of turned down so many times. And I know if it goes back to the TAC, they won't want to see the checklist, so there's a lot of variables to think about. So we'd just like to really recommend it getting passed regardless.
Sure, thanks for your comment. I guess it's not going to go back to the TAC. It's not what we're planning on doing here, so, okay.
Okay.
John.
So Pierce, on my little discussion on this section 6, number 4, that we're kind of more focused on the system. I mean, does that strike you as a problem? What's your sense?
See, I'd have to agree with Zach on this one, on eliminating it. I think, in my mind, the exception number 2, cost of accommodation is excessively disproportionate to the need or probable use, kind of covers any of that. In your example with, if we were to redesign Benson and there was a good alternative, I think that argument could be made under exception number 2. I think listing number 4 kind of creates an easy out to not think about it, an easy excuse to kind of disregard the policy. So yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
No, it's very good, thank you.
Okay, what's the will of the committee here?
I think if you're chair, you could just table something.
Well, but I think he's got a good point about, we're not talking about monumental changes to it. We're just undeleting potentially 2 things and moving on.
I don't think we're doing anything concrete. I think with this, we're doing something squishy. You got a checklist, you got something concrete, and it'd be just in time for Christmas.
I don't know that we'll have a checklist to sign off on at the next meeting, though. We're just gonna have examples to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I would move to approve with the proposed amendments, provided you still want yours.
Your amendment was, leave that checklist, undo
Undelete the
that.
checklist.
And I'd go ahead and leave 4 deleted then. I think 2 is probably close enough. Okay. So retain the deletion of number 4.
Okay, so
not change that.
not do anything
No
there.
change.
So we have a motion to amend the policy to undelete.
Motion to approve the policy
I think you gotta amend it.
with the undeletion of bullet number 4 or 5, bullet number 5 on page 5,
Well, section.
section 4, or sorry, section 5, you're right.
Section 5. Okay,
Lori, what's your preference? Do we need separate?
If you want to just do your motion with your amendment, add your amendments or with the suggestion, that'd be fine.
That's what I want to do.
okay, have a second?
I don't understand it, sorry. You moved to approve with.
Moving to approve the entire document
Right.
with the following edit. Undelete bullet number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, sorry, bullet number 4 on page 5. So that it reads, are you getting all this, Lori? so that it reads, "A project's compliance with this policy shall be determined based on the filing of a complete streets checklist form."
Can I recommend a small change? Sure. I would recommend calling it bullet 9 of section 5.
Oh.
That way if the pages change.
Sorry, okay,
Does that work?
yeah.
So it's bullet 9 of section 5. Reword.
I can't
Okay,
count.
so we have an amendment or a proposal to change that language, or to add that language back in. Discussion on this? We're good? Okay.
Good.
Anybody opposed?
Nope.
The motion passes. Okay. So,
Wait a minute. Please stop.
Did you want a public comment?
I would like to make a comment, if that's all right, just respond. Jessica Smith, Chief of Planning for AMATS Borough. So I heard some conversation about, it's, why don't we have a checklist that, this is very squishy and blah, blah. And so I want to bring this back to how you would look at this if you were a civil engineer, for example, right? We have the ASHTO Green Book, and that's a geometric policy, a geometric design policy book. That book comes out, and then from that, project managers and engineers take that information and they develop regulations and checklists, right? So this is kind of what you're doing when you do things like complete streets policies, and that checklist will probably come next. And I would encourage you guys to think about sending those checklists to your technical committee, or you guys, many of you are technical folks, and having that conversation at a technical level, because when it gets down to it, it's really going to be your project managers that could vet that checklist for you. So I'm excited you guys went ahead and passed your policy, because I think that checklist will come out even better after you've got a policy to work from. So, and that's coming from a trained engineer. So that's where my mind usually lives, and then somehow I've wandered into the planning world. So.
thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay. All right. Craig, any other action items?
No, sir.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item 6A, 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Vivian Underwood with the Municipality of Anchorage and staff to AMATS. Yesterday, we had our second work session on the financial plan for the 2040 MTP. We had great attendance, and we appreciate everybody who was there. We basically presented a high and a low scenario for consideration. One was, they're not radically different from each other, but one is a little more generous, and one is a little more conservative. And we presented the items that will be coming to you in December for your approval of: the cost inflation factor, the revenue inflation factor, and the overall general methodology and approach on our assumptions of sources for revenues. So we looked at everything that you all gave us, the feedback from yesterday, and Aaron has already made those changes in the spreadsheet. He's amazing. So we will bring back, I don't need to board spreadsheets, the spreadsheet with every line in our assumption for what years were averaged when the inflation factor is applied on out. So it was totally transparent. You can see exactly how every line item is calculated. And we appreciate your help so much. We can't do it without you. And then in January, we're going to have, this is going to enable us to do the draft preferred alternative for you all to react to in January.
Thank you. Question?
No good, thanks.
Questions from the public? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, agenda item 7A, Outlook meeting invite? What is that?
Me. I'm Aaron with AMATS. I'll be a little shorter today than I was yesterday. So it's just a quick heads up to the committee members that the Outlook invites that you got for the policy committee meetings are going to be changing and shifting. So if you see deletions come in, it's okay. The meetings are still happening. We're trying to update how we do the meeting invites so they're a little less confusing for everyone. I believe some people may have duplicate meeting invites in December, so we will be deleting the incorrect one, and whatever one's left is the correct one. So it is December 20th for the next policy committee. And then we're going to kind of shift how we do those in the future, so you're only getting kind of a year at a time, and then making November, December a little easier, so there's not 4 or 5 sent out and then retracted. So just wanted to give you a heads up. It's okay, don't freak out.
You will see several Outlook invites in your future, cancellations, et cetera. It'll all work out in the wash.
As long as they're coming from Aaron and not Craig, I know they're good.
Then they're better. So much
Careful,
better.
I sometimes channel Craig, so.
They channeled me the last one you sent out.
Okay. I'm not going to ask for comments. Anything from the public on that one? Okay. All right, any other informational? Craig?
No, sir.
Okay, any other comments from the committee?
No.
Comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Again, Jessica Smith, Chief of Planning at Matsu Borough. I would like to make a request to the Policy Committee. As we near the 2020 census, the Matsu is looking forward to possible designation as an MPO, and as your neighbors and friends, we'd like to seek your advice. So 2019 is when we're planning for that budget right now. And I would like to know your advice on how we can start to prep for that MPO. We imagine the census information and designation will come out until probably summer or fall 2021. We are preparing for census. We're getting our ducks in a row right now for 2020 on the technical side of things. The policy side of the MPO is what we would really like to chat with you guys. Now, my request is, how do we formally get our officials and you guys together to have that conversation, perhaps in a work session or something that could be available to the public, could be educational, and also just so that my officials and you guys can start having some of those hard conversations. I know that they will probably take some time. So that is for your consideration, and probably you guys can come up with a good idea. We do have a MPO self-assessment document that we put together in 2015, and it's got some next steps forward, and this is one of the steps, is approaching AMATS and just asking for advice and how to work together, because we will be close neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any response to that, John? Or you just...
No, I think it's a great idea, because it would be, we see lots of things in our budget, because we have the matching dollars would be in there, we have your planning department, maybe like ours, some are funded by AMATS, so that would be a huge difference in your budget, potentially. Would it affect 2019? No, it wouldn't, I mean, that'd be too soon, right?
We're preparing for fiscal year 2020 right
Yeah,
now,
okay.
because we're a July to June
okay.
budget. So that's why we're a little bit different. You guys have already done all your budget prep because you're calendar year, correct? Okay, and then of course you got to juggle the federal year, which begins October 1.
Yeah.
So the idea is to juggle all 3 of those budget years, and then also just kind of, I think first step is just get on your agenda, and I know your staff will have a good idea about how to arrange some sort of a work session. There was previously a years ago there was some sort of transportation committee where members of the Matsu Assembly and the Anchorage or the Muni's Assembly had a group that could meet, and it was in code. In you all's code, it was somehow not in our code. So I'm not sure if it disappeared or if it's still there. So you're thinking it's not there anymore?
I don't think we would have put that in code, it
think that
sounds
would
like
have
an
been
assembly
code.
policy or something.
Maybe I'm misspeaking, but I will get you what I saw, what I was thinking about, and I'll go back and look. And so I'm not sure how you would do that. The way that we would do it, I'll ask them, our clerks, what they would recommend too.
I think we had a assembly committee position that was the liaison or whatever, a member of
To the
that
group?
committee. And I actually think Suzanne LaFrance was appointed to it because
Okay.
her brother Pete's in Palmer, but.
So what I'm referring to is I think that the committee was in code.
This committee that I think she's referring to is something that existed in 2003 when Mayor Begich first came in. It was an RTPO, a Regional Transportation Policy Organization. There was a technical committee to that as well. So at the time, the mayor of Anchorage was a member of it, and at least one, if not 2, local assembly members. Mayor Matsu, the borough, Palmer, Houston, et cetera, they're all members. I was on their technical committee. But that policy committee, I don't believe that was enshrined in, through an ordinance or anything. I think it was just that the chair of the assembly said, here are the two assembly members, and then the mayor was part of it.
Yeah.
But it basically went away for a couple reasons, one of being lack of funding, because it had originally been funded through a state grant, so. I think that's the one you're referring to.
Might be.
Yeah.
I'll pull it. It was something that came up in conversation. Somebody had a snapshot. They were like, "What is this?" And but anyway, that might be it. It may have been something separate, but we'll figure it out. What I don't know, just because I'm not as familiar with how you guys operate your kind of subcommittees and things at the muni level, is how we would make that formal. I do think it's important to make it formal. That way we're notifying the public. We're having, we're definitely, you guys are, and we are, trying to follow up Public Open Meetings Act and those kind of things. So even if it's just a MOU or something between us, we can work on that. Also just making sure that's formalized so that we are having these discussions and they're sort of documented and we all know what's going on. So.
Probably obvious, but obviously DOT and PF would need to be part of this.
You bet.
Yeah, and you already have the structure there in the commuter rail, because all the mayors are involved in that.
Yes.
DOT's involved in that, the community has been involved in that, so
Yeah, Sue's at the
it's
table.
already there.
And that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, I have a question, because that might impact us too. When we've been the only MPO, so we haven't had to play with anyone, but isn't there a rule in the FAST Act if you have two adjacent MPOs that you have to play together and coordinate?
There was an initiative by Secretary Fox under President Obama to talk about that coordination and require that they jointly plan their long-range plans, et cetera. That was something that was rescinded by Congress, so that's no longer in play. But we're supposed to play nice in the same sandbox.
We should, but
Yeah.
if you have restrictions, it would be.
And on that note, that I think that one of the topic areas that we could explore together is talking about where could ideas like that make sense? For example, regional traffic modeling for collectors and hire, or maybe even minor arterials and hire, might make more sense as a full region, since we have 30% of our workforce is commuting out of the borough. So, and mostly right down the Glen Highway. So that's just an example of a topic area that may be an opportunity for efficiency. But thank you for the opportunity to chat about this, and I look forward to us figuring it out. I figure if we start talking about it now, maybe we'll have something put together by next fall.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, thank you all. This meeting is now closed at 2:20. Adjourned.